All right, we're back broadcasting live from quarantine at my house. My name's Gearface. Welcome to XS Exceed. You'll forgive me if I'm a little bit sick. People listening, I might cough a little bit. I've got a couple guests with me today. The first is novel coronavirus 2019. Everyone, please get vaccinated. The second, because I don't do these shows alone, is an expert here to teach me about this. I don't know. He's like a noodly bat muppet.
He
It's
is he
it's
is the best
Merkava.
noodly boy.
It's Merkava from season 6. It's Merkava from Under Night. But also, not only is coronavirus here, not only is Merkava here, but Shizzy Mac is here. My expert for the day to talk to me about this weirdo. Thank you so much for coming back on the show, Mac. I'm so happy that I didn't scare you off the first time.
Not at all. I am so happy to be back to show the other side of the characters I play, because it's not just heavies. I
So,
also play other people.
so last time you were here telling us about Waldstein, I feel like in terms of like height, you still have a stereotype that you're sticking with, but this guy is like if Waldstein went on like a really crash diet or something. He's real skinny.
They have a little bit in common. They have some strong moves. They're both over like 7, 8 feet tall.
Mhm.
They really frustrate you when you have to play against them. So there's a lot of things in common.
So there's a couple things that we can discern from your personality about these characters, I'm sure. All right. So, quick disclaimer before we get started. Number one, we talk about playing to win on this show. And that's not the only way to play Exceed. Exceed is, believe it or not, it's fun. You can play it for fun, and you should play it for fun. If the lines of play that we're describing are not, excuse me, are not fun, um, please play the way that you do find fun. You'll play longer that way. You'll get better overall. You'll have a better time doing it. Number two, we're going to be talking on this show for the most part in kind of prescriptive terms about strategy. We're going to be saying things like, oh, you should always do this. This is always an ultra. It's never a boost. Merkava should always exceed, or he should exceed at this point, stuff like that. Take all that stuff with a grain of salt. Exceed's not a solved game. I certainly haven't solved it. And even Mac, who is an expert, his opinion, however informed, is just his opinion. We would love to hear what you differ on in your estimation of Merkava from our estimation of Merkava. So please let us know uh, that we're totally wrong. We can turn it into a conversation that way. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Mac, tell me about Merkava.
All right. So Merkava is your resident mix-up zoner, I would call him.
Okay.
He is extremely mobile, and he gets to really break the resource parity by virtue of being able to move for no cost of a resource, but instead a cost of information and randomness, which I think is super interesting, super fun for me to play as. Sometimes less fun for other people who have a lack of ranged abilities, or they spent their boost badly to do something else and now they can't approach you because they have no copies of assault left.
Right,
It
right.
is uh it takes a special kind of person to play Merkava, kind of the same kind of person who plays Hazama, also me.
Okay. So
All right.
someone who's willing to sacrifice the enjoyment of their opponent in order for them to have a good time.
100%, and not just have a good time, win and make your opponent fume the entire time. It
Okay, so
is
this
special.
character has a high tilt factor, is what I'm understanding.
There was a tournament that I went to last time here locally. We had a 2-day tournament. I took Merkava as part of my team, and I played against someone who banned my Hazama that round because they were very frightened of it, and my Hazama is pretty good too.
Sure.
However, in the Merkava game I had, they had not known how to play against Merkava, and I love to teach people, but in the middle of a competitive tournament, that is not the time. And when the life parity hit 30-17, and I was on the complete other side of the arena as them, they scooped it up and said, "Nope, I'm done.
There's
I'm
no
gonna
way.
play it." Yes,
Yeah.
and
Ugh.
I kind of felt bad, but it kind of felt really good.
Well, you take the W, man. If that, especially if that's the kind of character, if that's the kind of play that this character can do. I think you told me at some point that you won another game at that tournament by deck out. Is that correct?
Yes, there was actually, 2 games in recent tournaments that I decked someone out with Merkava.
Okay.
Um, the one time where it was in the finals of a tournament, and it was against an Arakune, I, uh no, it was a Soul Bad Guy, I apologize. I attacked them with what would be a lethal move anyway. I knew they had no armor left, so I was going to win. And the Soul Bad Guy player says YOLO, and they wild swung, which was an ultra that they could not validate, and thus they lost before my attack even hit them.
Oh, gotcha. So,
Now,
so, so this, and this isn't just kind of tournament stories here. We're talking about this character and this character's strengths, but this is the kind of character that can engender that kind of play, who can
yes,
actually
this
legitimately
is
could turtle enough and play keep away enough to deck somebody out. And like decking Soul Bad Guy out, Soul's aggressive. Soul will kill you pretty quick.
he has to catch you first, which
Right.
is the game plan against a lot of people.
Okay.
So I am going to show you how I play Merkava and how I attempt to enact my game plan and win with him.
Sounds
And I
good.
think the best way to do so would be to start off by just taking a look at his uh, character ability right here.
Sounds good.
All right, so it says action. Choose advance or retreat. Reveal the top card of your deck. Advance or retreat X, whichever you chose, where X is the revealed card printed power. So what that means is you do have to choose a direction you're going first, advance or retreating. You don't get to pick afterwards if you don't get the number that you want. You've already committed to the direction. And for the low cost of revealing the top card of your library, you get to move its power in whatever direction you chose. So if you find yourself tucked away in the corner by a very, very mean Ryu,
For
and
example,
you
Ryu.
and I go, oh man, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to be here. Let me reveal the top card. Six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
All of a sudden, I got a lot of space to work with, and now you have to
Right.
catch up to me. And
Right.
I know Ryu doesn't have maybe a ton of ranged options besides Hadoken and Metsu, so that creates a really, really strong advantage that they have to close the gap on you.
Right. And as the game is going on, those options are going down and you can maintain that space, at
Exactly.
a greater advantage. Okay. So, a couple questions about excuse me, about the way that the rules work on this ability then. Number 1, reveal is not discard, nor is it draw. So if I'm pretty sure that the top card here is probably a grasp. Yeah, it's a grasp. So this is my deck. I, I'm Merkava. It's on my turn. I use this ability. I show I show you this. It's grasp. I
Yes,
move 3. I go here, pretend I'm there. Uh, Now it's the end of my turn. I draw for end of turn. The card that I draw is the grasp that I revealed. Correct?
exactly. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's kind of feeds into what you were saying earlier about, it's not a resource. I'm not spending force to move, but I'm at I'm at the mercy of what my deck is telling me. But also my opponent knows what card is coming into my hand every time I draw, as long as I'm doing this ability.
Every single time. You will draw the card unless there is some crazy boost out there that says your opponent does not draw cards when they I don't know, when they end their turn and they something like that would stop you from drawing it,
Right.
but
S- s-
normal regular scenario, you are drawing the card that you revealed and now your opponent knows it's in your hand.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And so that has uh its own pitfalls to avoid, where you're the more you use this, the more you're playing with known information. And in the case of a normal, for example, now I can get red going into my opponent's turn. Now I might be able to my opponent might be able to exploit what they know they I have in my hand.
Mhm.
So it sounds like it's a slightly dangerous ability.
It can be, and you will just have to sometimes wing it and just say, "Boy, I hope this is a number greater than 4," and pray for a sweep so you can fly to the other end. Or even sometimes, "I hope that this isn't a 6 because I don't want to go all the way across. I only want to go like a couple, but
I want to move like two
I
or three.
Yeah, but I don't have
Okay.
the resources to do so otherwise. Sometimes
Right,
you'll just
right,
have to gamble. It's part of the plan.
right. Okay. And so I mean, looking at his kit, uh, we've got a 6, we've got a 2. There's a 1 in here, which is actually kind of rare for Exceed. Among the normals, other than block, you're not going to get lower than a 3. Um, his specials have a 2 and have a 1, and they have this weird X thing.
Yep,
I'm not really. I guess X is your range to the opponent, so that actually does vary based on where you are. So that could be anything.
exactly.
But with the exception of this, even if you were spending it as force to move, you're getting a lot more than one space of movement out of this card. So it's not even a discount of one force; it's a discount of however far you're moving. So that's actually economically pretty crazy.
It's insane at how much you can move for essentially no resource cost. And when your opponent doesn't have a way to catch up, and the only way that they can move towards you is either like playing boosts that, hopefully can close you three, but a lot of times there's only little bit of boosts that's like say before advance one or just now advance one. And
Sure.
those are things that you can really deal with as Merkava. They're not really all that threatening. It's the big leaps of movement that you want to watch out for after you create space. And if your
Right.
opponents run out of ways to do that, you really have your game plan going.
And they by definition they will. They will run out of if we're talking about Ryu, who has in terms of like bulk movement options, he has uh run on cross 2 copies, and maybe he has lightning reflexes on Metsushoryu 2 copies. You have more than 4 cards in your deck. You can run away from him for longer than he can catch up with you, and that's going to be true of pretty much every character in the game. Is that correct?
Yes. Now,
Okay.
Ryu, I will say the fact that he has a free move tacked onto his character ability,
Right.
he will probably have actually a decent chance of kind of catching up to you um, economically because he can just do so slowly, but he'll save resources,
Right.
as opposed to someone who just has no real movement abilities. Um, they're going to suffer a lot more. It's going to be a lot harder for them to bridge that gap when you can just do it for free over and
Right.
over and over again.
So normally I would say that sounds to me like Merkava is able to like choose the terms of the engagement, right? Like he can say, "We are fighting here. This is where I'm going to be, and this is where you're going to have to deal with me, and this is and going into your turn, you're going to have to deal with that." But it's
Yep.
random, so I don't, as Merkava, have the ability to just say, "I'm fighting you here, and you're going to have to hold that." What I'm actually saying on my turn is I'm Merkava, and we're fighting somewhere else. I don't know where it's
I
going to
want
be
to
yet.
move in a direction.
Yeah, and that's the best I got. And odds are, just statistically, it's going to be fairly far, and it's going to get me to a place where I want to go. But I can't do the Ryu thing where Ryu has a Hadouken and a Shoryuken that are like these dominant attacks at certain ranges, and he wants to stay there and get there and stay there. Merkava is more like, well, I want to be away, and how far away and exactly the spacing that I'm going to land on is not really up to me, but I want to be away. And that's kind
Exactly.
of okay. All right. So that's interesting.
You do have a lot of options to where with your specials that if you don't happen to go to the range that you want, a lot of your moves will move you places or move your opponent to places.
Okay.
He's got a lot of ways to shimmy himself even if his ability didn't take him as far or as close as he wanted to go.
Okay. So now, and I assume that you're just using this ability as you need to, right? Like it's part of your game plan. You're getting to a range and you're staying there. But once you're there, you don't want to move again. You want to be threatening something from that new range or something like that.
Yes,
Um.
I'm going to in a bit when I get to the specials at least show you Merkava's what I think is his preferred range, which is like range 5 to 6,
Okay.
um, where he has an amazing time just psyching the opponent out and doing insane mix-ups.
Okay.
Uh, I do want to also point out with Merkava, his front side is very, very similar to his backside, where instead of revealing a card at random, you discard a card from your gauge.
Okay.
Uh, Merkava, as you can see, has a couple of ultras that cost 3, and X. We'll get to that later.
Hmm.
But he can really exist without a ton of gauge. He is not as gauge hungry as, Waldstein is. He can really exist with just having 3 gauge, and sometimes you just don't do anything with it.
Right.
Sometimes you want to flip for his backside so you have better control over where you can go. It's really up to the situation and what you think you need at the time.
So this is taking the randomness out of the situation because you're choosing something from gauge, but now you are committing a resource to do it at least. It's not free anymore on this side.
Exactly. You are
Gotcha.
losing 1 gauge, but you get to dictate the terms of where you want to go now.
Okay.
So now you can, and also the fact that on that flip side, your opponent sees what's in your gauge. You can always just revert and say, "Hey, now I'm going to be going somewhere else, so prepare for that." Maybe. Who
I see.
knows?
So if they're looking at your gauge and they're seeing, so he has capture and devour engage, and that's it. He can only move one. Well, no, he can't only move one. He can revert and pull something from the top of his deck and do it that way instead.
Exactly. He can just
Gotcha.
go whoop.
Okay.
I will be just straightforward up with his exceed side. I do not use it that much. I don't feel like I've been in positions where I need to. The only times that I have were when I really, really needed 1 extra gauge, and I'll veil off with focus, get that extra gauge, and now I can threaten an ultra that I couldn't before, or something like
Gotcha.
that.
Okay.
Generally, don't feel like I need to stay in it all that much because I'd rather have the resource advantage than the assuredness of where I'm going when I have to pay a resource.
Right. So, like, because what it sounds like is the sort of binary uh, of Merkava's front side ability is like, again, you're generally not trying to land on a specific space. It's more like, did I go far enough? Right.
Yep.
Okay. And again, statistically, based on your position and based on what's in your deck, you probably will go far enough to zone out your opponent. When you were talking about his preferred mix-up range of 5 to 6, I mean that's farther out than most characters can even meaningfully threaten. Like most characters will have like a projectile. Like Ryu's a not the best example, but most characters will have like a projectile that gets you that far. If his whole game plan is out at that range, that's I mean that's notable in itself. Like if he can box from that far away consistently.
Yes, he is. He can really threaten at high speeds, low speeds, big damage. He can exist in that range so comfortably with a resource advantage that just keeps continuing while you are losing options and you're possibly losing cards from hand. Uh, Possibly even losing trades if you're trying to risk the mix-up that I'll explain in a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, he wants you as far away as you don't want to be. If
Yeah.
you like
Yep.
being at range, 3, he wants you at range 5 and 6. If you like being at range 5 and 6, that's going to be a little bit rougher for Merkava, but he still can deal with that. He has a lot of options to close that gap when he needs to, go back out. He's very slippery noodle boy.
Yeah, I feel like that's the word that I keep coming back to in my head is he's slippery. He's hard to pin down. So it sounds like the game plan basically is run away, maintain space, make them come to you, make them bleed resources while they're coming to you, and then exploit the holes that those resource expenditures open up with your
Yes.
with your ranged specials.
There you go. When
Okay.
you know that your opponent cannot well respond to any of the mix-ups that you have, or if you know that, hey, I can afford to throw this, and if I'm wrong, it's not bad for me, and it's does nothing for them. And if I'm right, they're devastated, and I only get, farther and farther ahead.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Cool. All right. So that's like the overall game plan. Um, anything else about his character ability and how it informs his game plan before we get into the specials?
Um, yes, I would say that something to consider is you have a normal that has 0 power. You have block.
Yep.
And Merkava's ability is at its worst when you have 2 blocks in your deck somewhere. Because let me tell you what, moving 0 is bad. You waste your turn, you feel sad, but now you've shown your opponent, I have block in hand. Do with that what you will.
Right.
And oh boy, you might as well not have a block in hand half the time because they're just going to go, sweet, I'm going to reading your block and spike you,
Of
3
course.
damage, and you are feeling terrible.
Yeah.
Now, after you've played your one block, you only got one left. You can really like risk, okay, I don't think I'm going to be moving 0 this turn. I got a pretty good shot of a decent power. Once both blocks are out of your deck, you're going to move every single time. You know that you're going to be moving. It's just a question of how far. So his ability straight up scales with the less blocks you have in your deck versus the number of other cards in your deck.
Right. So mulligan for your blocks, basically. Uh,
I,
uh,
I wouldn't say mulligan to your blocks, perhaps, but if you have a starting hand and you already have one block, you're like, okay, you know what? I can work with this. Having one
gotcha.
block's not terrible.
Okay, that makes sense. And if you're in a position where the whole game rests on you top decking the right card for the moment to get to a certain range, you know, there might have been some mistakes along the way anyway that you have to fix up. Like if everything came down to that one moment, but in general, you're looking to make your deck more consistent for movement, so you're trying to get your blocks or your low movement cards out of it.
Yes, there. I find with Merkava, I'll go into that more when we finish his specials, and I want to talk about some of his fun reasons to use certain normals in certain ways and boost them rather than. I'll get into it a little bit later. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, great. That sounds good. All right, so let's talk specials. And I know that you had a specific order that you want to cover these in. So please go
Yes.
ahead.
So generally, I'd like to order them in speed, but Merkava, I would like to order in what I think is importance to his game plan.
Sure.
From left to right, I think that these cards are not per se the best or the worst in his kit, but the best for enacting his game plan and putting your opponent in that horrible spot where they feel like they don't have any options.
Okay.
And number one is I Breathe Out. This is Merkava's most stupid card. I hate this card. I love this card. It is a range 2 to 4, power 3, speed 5. So we're already breaking the speed curve.
Already above
Um,
curve, right?
you start at range 4, and with a speed 5 option, you beat EX Dive, which a lot of times for characters, that's the only option they have to, you know, fight against the turn 1 play.
Right.
And this beats that cleanly. It's such a good card because it says after, not even hit, after you retreat 2, you may return this to the top of your deck.
And just wild swing it and do it again. Uh oh, but then no, then you know that you have a 3 movement thing on top of your deck too, and you can
Exactly.
on your next turn you can guarantee that you can move somewhere.
Yep, you know that you're going to have power. You know that you're going to have that on top of your library. Um, if you're ever in the situation where you think your opponent's just like, hey, I'm playing a card that I don't think is going to hit you. I just want to play a card to, maybe try and juke you out.
Right.
I breathe out. Okay, play it. Oh, I missed. I retreat to. Okay. I put it on top of my deck. I lost nothing. I
Right.
put a card on top of my library. I'm not losing a resource. I'm just delaying it again a little bit. And you can always prepare, get it back into your hand. You can keep it on top if you really want. But this card is going to be your other method of creating space between you and your opponent. Stunning them out and then retreating to put it back on top of your library, draw it again later, do the exact same thing. When you only advance, say, 3 or 4 past the opponent and not the 7 you wanted to, this is going to be the main card to start making more and more space and
Right.
push yourself farther from the opponent.
Because that retreat too, it's not a situation where a lot of characters who are playing cross, for example, are weighing the relative safety of cross versus the fact that they probably don't want to get far away from their opponent. Merkava does want to be far away. So this retreat too is actually just a benefit for him most of the time.
It's almost like a straight up benefit. There have been
Okay.
very few times playing this where I'm like, boy, I wish I can't retreat 2 now. No, I
Right.
love retreat 2. I love being as far away from the opponent as possible when they don't want me to.
Right.
Um,
And then you recur it, you run them out of resources. You like this is the whole game plan in one card, basically.
Yes, this does it enables you, and Merkava, like I said, he's not gauge hungry. You really don't lose too much by using this, hitting them for 3, backing up 2, and putting it on top of your deck.
Right. I
Yeah,
was
you
actually
reveal a
about to ask that, like most characters, that's a tension where if they're recurring something, they might not be getting it in their gauge. Merkava doesn't care so much.
No, he can definitely live without it. And there is going to usually be a point where you're like, okay, I kind of like need to start building up gauge for an X, Y, or Z reason.
Right.
I'll put it in because you might need it at the time. Your cards are always going to be best for what you need them for at the time. And when I breathe out's no longer going to be that really, really good attack, okay, if you hit with it, might as well throw it in the gauge. Or you might want to save it for its equally insane boost,
Right.
instant flight. This card is good on both ends, and unlike a lot of other good cards, you get to use both if you want to.
Right, because you can
So,
recur it. Okay.
yep, you can hit them with this 3 times, slap instant flight down, and go sail away on your next turn. It is so much movement packed into one card, and it costs a force to play because it's really good. Because before you reveal the top card of your deck, advance or retreat X, where X is the card's revealed power. It's your ability as a before.
Right. So
Uh,
now you're doing it. Now you're doing it where you are allowing yourself. You're basically turning yourself into Mole Knight for a turn or something. You just like dramatically you're above curve with whatever you're pulling from the top of your deck. Uh, you're using that for to dive in or to get away and hit with a projectile in the
mhm.
middle of your strike rather than beforehand.
Yes, you get to all compact it in a slapping your stability as a before. Now, instead of having to take a turn and do that, it's all just smushed into one. And it can still go wrong. It is still a random card that you are revealing unless you have another card on top of your library that you know the power of. But regardless, it's still just a very, very powerful ability.
Right. And so the timing wise, a before effect is going to go off after you've already committed to the strike and everything like that. So not only do you get the movement during the strike, you also find out where you're moving during the strike.
Yep. There
Right.
you go.
Okay. But one thing that I'm noticing in terms of the timing on my character ability, I choose advance or retreat and then I reveal. On this, I reveal and then I just get to pick. Right. So
Yeah.
I do
This
have a
one
little.
is
I've got a little bit of control then.
Yes, it
Okay.
is. It is a little bit more controlled because you know how many you're going to go before you advance or retreat. You don't have to choose before you reveal. So if you hit something, like, "Oop, that's too far," or "I didn't want to go that far in that direction," you just go the other direction. If
Right.
you're in the corner and you're like, "Yeah, you know what? Maybe I don't want to advance into my opponent's sweep. I'll just retreat, stay over here, miss my strike, and not take 6 damage."
Right, you can kind of option select your way through it, but you did commit the strike first, so
Yes.
you're not able to say like, ah, I see, I top decked grasp. I know that I'm going to advance 3 before this strike. I will play this card then. You can't do that.
No, you've already chosen the card and
Gotcha.
pretty much picked your poison there.
Okay, cool. And so like you said, you don't need to choose between which side of this card you're using, and they're both going to do stuff for you. When are like I feel like I breathe out the use cases are kind of self-explanatory from what you told me about Merkava's game plan. When are you using instant flight?
So instant flight is going to be used in 2 main ways: to retreat with a very fast ability if you think that that's what you need to do at the time, or if we look over here about his ultra, that's a pretty high speed. But I think we might have to get into that a little bit later. But keep that one in mind there.
Okay, gotcha. That's that
Um,
in the business we call that one a teaser.
Um, so if you are up close to your opponent and you want to be very far away, play a fast move that you don't mind maybe missing with, or you know that they don't have any options that are faster than that, and you can create a lot of space between your opponent, for I don't want to say free, but pretty quickly at least, instantly.
Right.
Um, on the flip side, if you have created a lot of space from your opponent and you have run out of all your ranged options, and you're like, I have like a handful of sweeps and slows and stuff, I'll slap this down, and then next turn I'll strike. And you better have something slower than focus because I'm just going to, advance after pretty much all your moves are done.
Right. Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, one other question about this. So, this is occurring during a strike, which means that I'm not going to draw at the end of my turn.
No, you
So,
know what's on top.
I know it's on top of my deck. Wow, okay. So all right, next turn then. I put this boost down, somebody swings into me. I reveal the top card of my deck. I do all the stuff that you just described. I put it back down on top of my deck. Now it's my turn. I know what's there.
Yep.
And can do my character ability with that or something or okay. So I can kind of double up on that information because I'm not drawing the card at the end of the strike.
Yes, and it
Gotcha.
essentially doesn't give your opponent any more information if you use that ability to, move. They already know it's there, so you're
Right.
showing them a card that you already know.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that seems not having uh not having played Merkava, so thinking about it kind of from the opponent's perspective, everything that you just described seems incredibly annoying, which I feel like is
He-
is is probably the point, right?
yes, he is so hard to pin down, so hard to catch. In an instant, you think like, okay, I've got him corner. Nope, he's on the other side of the screen again.
Again, for the sixth time this game. All right. I love it, by which I mean I hate it, which means I love it. So I feel like it's doing its job.
All right, so I breathe out, in my opinion, most important card to his game plan because it is a repeatable way to create space between you and your opponent. Now,
Right.
once you have all that space, what are you going to do with it? What do you have that hits that range 5, 6, and even like 7, 8, 9, perhaps, if you want to go crazy? I Persistently Cling has a range of 0.
Okay.
And Power 7, Speed 1, Guard 5. So, how in the world does this hit? Well, when you set this card, you may place it face up on a space. If you do, calculate range from that space. After, if this did not hit, return it to your hand.
Interesting. So it's a trap. It's something that you put down. It's something that you put down on top of them when you're striking. And if they played a dive, okay, well you whiffed. Or if they played
Yes,
assault, well you whiffed. But if they didn't, you're hitting them for 7.
correct. You are smashing them if they are playing anything that does not move. If they are out of movement options, solid chance they're just going to take 7 to the face and be very sad about it.
Right. I'm also noticing that this is not when you initiate with it. So if they're
No.
if they're uh, striking into you at range and they have a projectile, for example, um, with a projectile without any sort of movement effect afterward or something, you can just put this down and it's unreactable. They're just going to have to deal with it. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
you're still calling their mix up. If they dove in, you're still sad. But
Oh, am I sad?
oh yeah, it didn't hit. Return to your hand. Right. Okay.
I didn't spend anything. This was free for me. You had to spend a dive to get closer to me, and now that's in your discard. I get this back, and once I create more space between us again, I'm going to continuously threaten. I persistently cling until you simply have no other options to move. Until
Right.
you're out of dives and assaults and other wiggly cards.
So you either bait them with other cards that deal with the things that they're that deal with you anti-air them basically, or you just legitimately put this card down over and over again, and eventually they're going to run out.
Yes.
Okay.
It is very, very fun to place down and say, "Hey, opponent, dodge this if you even want to,"
Right.
because this is also going to be part of your long range 6 mix up. And a couple more cards in, I'm going to get a little more in depth with it, but this is going to be part of your mix up trifecta here.
Gotcha. So, and the opponent is always going to know this is coming because it's face up. I'm seeing that there's a May in here, but you cannot hit with a range 0 card. I mean, I guess the boost on it gives it more range. Is
There's
there
a
is there ever a situation where you're playing this card face down as a strike?
I cannot answer accurately until we go through a couple more cards because you might be pointing out my sneaky range 6
Oh,
mix up.
okay. I think I know. All right, I think I know where this is going, and I like it in spite of myself. Please continue. I will let you run the lesson, but I'm mad if this is how it's going to end up.
All
Okay.
right. So the boost on I persistently cling, it's wide. It's good. +0 to 1 range, and now advance or retreat 1. It's a very good ability to create some space between you and your opponent. Lets you do things like spike at range 4, sweep at range 4, dive at range 2 or 4. It's very good. It's solid. I don't find myself needing it all that much, though. If there are times where I really just need to not actually, but effectively close the distance between my opponent, where I want to threaten being closer without actually being closer. This can do that twice. I can advance 1 and get 1 range. That's essentially like increasing my range by 2 almost. So
Right.
it definitely is good. It definitely has its uses. The card, however, is just, in my opinion, so much better and meatier than the boost can. I recommend, if it's not going to make you win a very important strike, to not use this as a boost.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like it. Excuse me. It sounds like it. The strike is part of your win condition. Uh, of running them out of resources at range and then killing them with I persistently cling. You need a pretty good reason to give that up.
Yes,
Okay,
it better be something super important that'll really help you there, or otherwise, I think you really should just focus on using the strike.
cool. That makes sense to me.
All right, so next up is Eye Capture and Devour. Range 3 to 6. Power 1. Speed 6. Hit. Close 5 and gain advantage. So here we have one of Merkava's weaker moves on the power side. It's a little tickle. He reaches out and just gives you a fun little touchy touch.
Right,
But you're not going to be playing this for damage. It's clearly not for that. This is a good card when you either A, need to close the gap between you and opponent very quickly, when you want to interrupt a faster project or a normally fast projectile that might be like speed 5 or so, um, or if you now have a handful of normals and you're like, all right, I've exhausted all my options and I want to, start being offensive at range 1 while they're in the corner. This is a
right.
great card for that.
Because sometimes he does have to box. It sounds like up close, and the normals are good for that.
Yes, I
Okay,
said that Merkava is a zoner mix-up character. I want to be known that in the way that he is both a zoner who mixes you up, and he mixes up where he is at. He can fight
okay,
you a little bit closer, he can fight you a little bit farther.
right.
He just wants to be where you don't want him to be.
Okay. So this is your dramatically above curve kind of call out card for fast projectiles, but it's also just an offensive like pressure starter for when you're ready to move in close and you've got a sweep and a focus or something.
Yes, once you decided that you are done being at range, this is your neutral skip, gap closer. This is your slap. Like, how dare you try to approach me with something that isn't guarded or anything like that? It is. I want to be at range 1 right now, and also next turn take my turn.
Okay. Nope, that all makes sense to me.
The boost on this card, Slithering, before advance to retreat 1. A little bit of a theme going on here.
Yep.
Uh, One of his boosts that just gives him a little bit extra range. I like this boost. It's the same thing as instant flight, but to a smaller but very controlled degree, where you can hover outside of an opponent's threat range with a slower move of yours. Um, Range 4, play this, drop a sweep, your opponent can't spike you anymore. So
Right.
you're very happy.
Right, right. Or I mean you're on a hard read you're spiking at range 1 or something. Like you
Yeah,
because you can choose the before effect again like we talked about with instant flight. You can choose the direction after the strike is revealed and you see what the opponent is doing. So
exactly.
you actually have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of where you're going to end up, and you can kind of option select your way through some things.
Yes, if you are playing like a faster card and you're like, oh, my opponent is just playing Spike, I will use this to stay at range 1 so they cannot spike me.
Right,
They're playing Sweep. I hope I played Grasp because now I can. Oh wait, no, that doesn't work. Cross. Whatever. It just gets you one farther, one closer when your opponent doesn't want you to be there.
right,
All of a sudden, your assault hits at range 4, dive at range 5. It's just that little extra boost of movement that you need during a strike.
Okay. That'll make sense.
All right. And next we're going to go to I Rampage. This move is range 1 to 3, allegedly. Power 4, speed 4. So we have an unguarded mid speed. Before advance 3, hence why I said allegedly 1 to 3
Right.
range.
So this is a big old dive.
Yeah. This hits from across the screen 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Uh, so before advance 3, hit, push, or pull 1. After, you may return this to the top of your deck.
Wow. He has a lot of recursion, I guess, between this and I Breathe Out.
Yes, he has multiple options that he can just spam and use very well to draw out your opponent, get them in a position they don't like, use one of those moves to make yourself a little bit safer, and then rinse, wash, repeat.
Right, right, right. Okay. And so this is again in some cases very very above curve. Well, I mean speed curve starts to go away when you get this far out, but it's a range like 6 move most of the time.
Yeah, you are hitting like range 3. Yeah, you are hitting at range 6, and you get to push or pull 1.
Right.
So effectively you can put your opponent at range 4 afterwards. So if you're hitting with this at max range, sweep, spike, focus, none of them do anything to you anymore. They're
Right, right,
just
right.
going to be outside of the range.
Okay, so and again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves when you have a specific thing to talk about the mix up, but like if I put down a card uh at range 6 and my opponent goes, "Okay, well that's he's coming in. That's dive. I'll sweep." And it's this. This kind of works a little bit like a projectile would for another character where I'm not actually moving as far, like, I am moving, but I'm not moving all the way into melee range.
Yes,
So
it's
I'm able to bait out some counterattack responses the way that I would with like a Hadoken with Ryu or something.
yes, it is exactly that. It also at range 1 does the same thing where it puts you at range 4, uh, just differently. Instead of
Oh,
closing the
sure.
gap, hitting them, and then pushing them away, at range 1, you play this, and your opponent plays sweep. Congratulations. You cross them up, you push them back into the corner. You're at range 4, and you now have a dominating positional advantage against them.
Because this
S-
is where you probably want it to be anyway.
Yep.
Okay, so this is also kind of your get out of the corner the way that you would do a range 1 dive, but this is a
Yes.
range 1 dive that hits and actually gives you more of what you want.
It doesn't dodge attacks afterwards, but the trade of having it return back to my deck and being able to just push you that one out is so good. I play
Yeah.
Waldstein. Of course, I love to push people one.
Right, yeah, this is your whole bag, right?
All right, and the boost on this card is one that I really like, and luckily for us, we get to play the attack and the boost.
And the
So
boost, right.
deflection is +1 power, hit, gain armor equal to your power. I think Wagner has this boost as well. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
that is hers might be like damage instead of power, something like that, but either way,
Yeah.
armor
Uh,
equal to your power is potentially ridiculous.
yes, because I'll say Waldstein. Merkava has a couple of moves that hit pretty hard,
Yeah.
and not always at the slowest speeds. And sometimes things like assault or dive when you're not crossing over, or maybe an I drill through if we talk about it later. We will, but when we talk about it later, those are all cards that move you in and put you into sometimes a vulnerable position as Merkava. And hitting them for 4 damage and then getting 4 armor, 5 armor is really good. It
Yeah.
almost makes you win trades like nothing.
Yeah, like just looking at the economy on this thing, like zero zero force special boost that gives you armor even if you played it on like grasp, right? Just trying to hit.
Yeah.
All right, well, now my grasp has 4 armor. So I'm trading up on sweep and stuff like that. Like that's actually
It,
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, you hit a focus and you go, you take 2 damage, I take no damage, draw your card, we both get gauge. It's not
Yeah.
a horrible trade.
Yeah, that's actually and it gets more and more ridiculous the more power you staple onto it, but even in kind of worst case scenarios, that's more armor than more armor than most characters get for zero force on a special boost. That's pretty noteworthy.
It is a wonderful, wonderful boost, and I love it so much because it just gives you one raw power, and then on hit, armor equal to your power. You do definitely want to be using this with faster moves, like you said, grasp and cross if you think your opponent has a guarded projectile or something like that.
Right.
But it doesn't matter how much armor your opponent has when you hit them because it's just wants your power. It doesn't care about damage. So even if your opponent plays a heavily armored option, you are still getting your defensive stats from it. You
Right.
just have to hit them first.
But if they outspeed you, uh you're not getting anything out of it because it is a hit effect.
You're getting +1 power, which isn't terrible, but
Right.
you're definitely not getting the
The
benefit
armor.
that you're going for. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and similar to I Breathe Out, there's the convenience of being able to play both of these at once, or both of these in on the same card because you're recurring it. Uh, Similar question to I Breathe Out. Are you ever worried about putting this in your gauge, or is Merkava just so gauge agnostic that you're going to want to be recurring this most of the time?
Generally, you want to be recurring it, but the same thing with I Breathe Out. Once it's no longer that good of an option and you need the gauge like really fast, I'll put it into gauge, but I would usually rather save it for the boost because it's just such a solid boost.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, I will talk about the rest of his specials in a second because I want to talk about these 4 cards right here real fast and the horrors that they will present for you. Because by themselves, they are good cards, but when you combine them, they are all of a sudden terrifying. So, I would like you to imagine a scenario where we are beginning a game of Exceed,
Right.
and we mulligan our hands, and alright, cool. Turn 1, I'm going to play I Breathe Out a lot. It's a good card, great opener, it hits you, puts me at max range, and most of the time you don't have a thing that's faster than it that also advances you or puts you in a good scenario.
Right.
So a very plausible scenario that happens to me a lot is I win the strike, Merkava retreats 2, I put I Breathe Out on top of my library. These guys can kind of just move away for a second.
Sure thing.
um and
I gotcha.
say you
Oh, sorry.
oh,
No,
those
we need
yeah,
those ones.
these ones are
Sorry.
gonna stay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Continue.
And say that you do literally anything else except move forward.
Right.
You prepare, you play a boost, you do something else. That's great. How do I shuffle?
Hit here if you
Oh,
put these
stack
up
them
like
up.
this and you just hit R. Yeah, there you go.
All right, cool. I'm striking you.
Yeah.
Not that I'm like wild swinging, but I have these 3 cards in my hand, and I'm striking you with one of them.
Yeah,
What in God's name am I playing?
yeah, and I as your opponent am thinking, what am I? Yeah, okay, so one of them is incredibly above curve and moves me in really fast, but only does 1 damage. So I'm gonna want to be playing a sweep or a focus or something to punish you for that. The other one isn't going to do anything. It's just a block basically. It's a feint to
It's a nothing, yeah.
make me spend movement. And then the third one is our is what do you call it?
The
The big fast dive in.
yes. So you have the option of playing against nothing
Right.
or something. And sometimes losing to nothing is worse than losing to something. A lot of times, if I'm going to attack at this range, opponents are like, I don't know what to do. Because if I play some slow, I lose to I persistently cling and I rampage. Because if I play this face down and you decide to sweep, you lose sweep, I get the stack in my
You lost
hand.
nothing. You didn't do any damage, but that was still a win for you.
Yes, and now your opponent's going to go, oh no, I can't stay at this range, and I can't even keep wild swinging because eventually, if he keeps doing this, I'm going to run out of options.
Right.
So this is usually when the opponent likes to panic advance. They'll start dishing a lot of force, usually get to like range 3 or so. You use your ability, maybe prepare a little bit, fly to the other side of the screen, and do it again.
Right.
On the flip side, if they do place sweep and they're like, okay, I want to be prepared, boom, I rampage. So you advance 3, hit him for 1, push him 1.
You push him, you're still safe.
Yep. I
Yep.
go, okay, I gained a little bit of a thing. I'll put this on top of my library again. Who cares? Next turn, if you don't strike, or even if you do, I'll retreat 4. Put this back in my hand. The mix-up is live again.
Oh God, yes, because you just you knew that was there because you put it there.
hmm
Okay.
And if at any point I strike with one of these face down and you're like, you know what? I think he's fainting me out with I persistently cling. I gotta start gaining some space here.
Right,
Let
right.
me play
I
dive. Let me play assault.
yeah, so now you're thinking now Ryu's thinking, okay, I can't spend my turn moving in because that's just going to give him time to move out again. I need to move in during the strike. So I will Tatsu or I will something. You know, I'll dive. I'll get my free movement in while I can. Oh no, this is incredibly above curve and I just got stuffed out.
You are getting cross screen slapped. I'm going into your face. And I'm going, cool. That movement card you absolutely just wasted. I have advantage. I would like to retreat 3 this turn. Bing, bang,
Right.
boom.
Right.
I am
And
now at range 4 with a speed
with
5 retreat 2 strike.
with the exact same mix up as before and they just wasted a dive which means that this is now better.
There you go. This
Gotcha.
is the frustrating loop that some players just don't know how to get around. And even good, experienced players, it's tough when you have to bleed out your options and use boosts and good ultras to, be force efficient in moving in. Those are options that you are giving up in the future and ones that I know I can play around now. Like, okay, he has like one less ultra in his hand. I know later he can't EX Metsu Shuriken me or something like that.
Right, right.
You're bleeding out their information just as much as you're giving theirs, or you're giving them yours, but you can take better advantage of that by
Right.
increasing your range and just putting them in this hellish mix-up.
Because I mean, you already are in a situation when you're in. First of all, you can maintain this range fairly easily because of your character ability. You're even at the beginning of the game when you're at this range or this range, you're already at a huge advantage because you have this mix up. It's just going to get worse the more stuff my opponent drops. Like it's going to be harder and harder for them to respond.
It's not an easy hill to climb, and it's
Right.
something that you think like, okay, he reveals a card, he moves. Okay, that's pretty good. But when he can do it almost whenever he needs to on his turn, it's going to add up so high. And
Yeah.
you're going to feel like an absolute peasant at a man who has a feast of everything.
Right. And he's actively keeping you out
hmm
uh, and threatening you from where you can't deal with it anymore. Yeah, that seems really frustrating. That seems really tough to deal with.
Yeah, it's great. And eventually, when you decide, like, hey, I no longer wish to do this mix up, I would like to start engaging and beating the ever living out of them because lots of their good options are gone,
Yep.
you can start playing like, hey, I'm going to I persistently cling you right here. Do
Yep.
something about it.
Yep. Deal.
Or maybe not at this range. Let's pretend I'm here because that's much safer.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Okay, ow, you hit me with Hadouken, take 7.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you're like, oh, that's not good.
And now you're starting to now that you've kind of choked out the options from them. Now you're starting to go in for the kill.
Yep.
Okay.
And another thing to do is if your opponent has been, pushed here, maybe range 7 or so, you can start going like, okay, you know what? I don't want to do the mix up anymore. I want to do the call out. I'll place I persistently cling here. Do you have dive or would you like to
Oh,
waste a turn?
interesting. Okay. So and now you're saying, all right, well, I'm gonna assault in. Oh no, I can't assault in anymore. I've got to pick something else. But both my dives are down or something like that. Like
Yep.
you're like I said earlier, you're setting a trap for them with
You're
this.
restricting their movement options that they don't want to do. And if
Interesting.
you know they have both dives, you can put it here and be like, hey, you can use assault this turn if you have it, or you can use a move that has 1 or 2 move, but you're not
Right.
diving, you're not getting maximum value, or you're going to take 7. Take your
Interesting.
pick.
Interesting. Gotcha. And I mean, you could even if they're initiating into you, um, like here, does this work? Like if I'm Ryu, both my
Yeah.
Hadokens are down or something, and I'm diving in. You say, okay, I respond here,
Yep, you can
and
certainly do that.
he comes in. It's got 5 guard. Like it'll armor through it, and you're at least trading up. All
I
right.
I do like using the eye persistently cling when it is at its safest because 5 guard is good, but it is
It's
breakable in melee.
it's not totally safe, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's not focus 7 or even sweep 6. It's 5, which is good against a lot
Yeah,
of things,
but
but
but at speed 1, that's not enough to really mess around with. So you
yeah,
are mostly using this offensively at your preferred range. It's not really, you're I like the idea of proactively restricting their movement as an attack rather than saying, all right, well, you're probably diving in, so I'm going to put it here or something. I'm going to try to call you out. That makes sense to me.
yes, it's can definitely do that, and you might be in a situation where hey, they're at like 15 life. If you do that, they're at 8. You're 2 strikes away from winning, so
Right.
you don't need I persistently cling anymore. Just hit them for 7, and that's a great position to be in.
Right.
Um, it's just one of those ones where you could kind of do the same thing with a sweep. And if
True.
I have the choice between using my premium, game plan payoff right here and sweep, I think I'd rather use sweep.
Makes sense. I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. And so and I mean later on, they've dove in on you. I wonder how Merkava's going to get away here. Runs away
Woo!
again. Well, now you still have I persistently cling, and you can keep threatening with
There you go. And you're just going to keep bleeding them out of options. You're going to keep making
it.
them wild swing to even try and maintain a hand. And if they don't have the ways to respond or they already had to get rid of them for something else, they're going to find themselves in a mountain of disadvantage and usually start to tilt a little bit.
Yeah.
And that really has an effect sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. No, that makes sense, and that is an absolutely brutal mix-up. I'm glad that I'm glad that you didn't let me spoil it.
I wanted to give it like its own full segment.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
presented this mix up before I even finished his specials because that's how important it is
Yeah.
to his game
No,
plan.
in the YouTube video, I'll have a little timestamp specifically for this mix-up, and then we'll have like specials part 2.
Okay,
Here,
let's get
let's
back into
pull these
the
guys out here.
yeah, I just kind of threw them mercilessly. They're still good cards. I want you to know that these are still very good cards.
I believe you. But what do we got here?
So,
We got I agitate.
I agitate and I drill through, which are a couple of slow mid speed and fast mid speeds that we have.
Okay.
I agitate is a sweep like, range 1 to 3, power 5, speed 3, guard 5. On hit, reveal the top card of your deck, push or pull X, where X is that card's power.
Okay.
So we're doubling down on the theme of revealing the top card, except this time instead of Merkava moving, he gets to move you.
Right.
So if you find yourself in the corner like this scenario right here, and I agitate while you're trying to sweep me or even grasp me, can end up with you being thrown all the way over here again.
Right.
And now we're back in Merkava's preferred range.
Yeah. And same thing, you're not drawing the card. You get to then uh pull it from your deck with your character ability again if you want to. It's the same thing as the where is it?
The instant flight.
The instant flight before effect. You're not you're not drawing the resource that you revealed. And I mean, at a like even pushing a little bit is going to be fine, but you've got 7 and 6 power in your deck. You really could just you could kind of do the phonon thing and just sort of fling them across the entire field.
And like you said, all your normals are, 3 power plus minus block. So even like pushing 3, that's a phenomenal trade.
That's
Now you're
enough.
over
Yeah,
here.
that
That's
sounds great.
great.
That's enough to dodge sweep. Uh, so that's a pretty safe mid speed to mash. It seems like.
Yeah, it has a good range, so it still trades up with grasp. Gross obviously gets out of it, but even like assaulting or diving into it, unless you're like diving over it or breaking it with extra power, you can really just get flung across the screen, which a lot of cases is worse than the sweep discarding you a card,
Yeah,
because now you have to spend that card or even more to
to move back
advance.
in and keep on running your game plan. And in the meantime, Merkava's doing this whole thing that you just described.
He's like, "Oh, you tried to sweep me. I threw you across the screen. It's my turn. It's time for the mix-up, honey. What do you want to guess?"
You keep on spinning the wheel of fortune.
I will say real quick about this mix-up too. Your capture and devour that does not repeat. So
Right,
once that this has been used to hit someone, it's out until you draw the second copy. But
right.
you can still do a very good job with the I persistently cling and I rampage mix-up as well.
Yeah,
So
like
just because,
this deals with most above curve options just fine, just by virtue of how long range it is.
yeah.
Okay,
Alright, that was my quick aside. So
gotcha.
yes, I Agitate is a very good card. It is important to his game plan. It enables it like I Breathe Out, just in a different way. Instead of creating space by moving, you throw him across with a slightly stronger card.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the boost on this, Lie in Wait, is good. It is +3 guard, so you now have some lighter mid speeds like uh, 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 you can make assault ungraspable. You
Yep,
can pretty much tack on a little bit extra if you think your opponent's going to be boosting up their power and not spiking you. But also, when this card is discarded, you draw two. It's card advantage. So
yep.
if you think that I need to, play this guard, not be broken, make a trade, fill up next turn, this is a very good card for that. I really like this boost a lot because this is discarded either by getting what's the word? Ukemid or
Oh, if you tech it, it still is being discarded. You're still
is
getting
being
the
discarded.
two cards. Interesting.
Yeah. So if you don't want them to have 3 guard, then either have them try and waste the strike. Oh wait, even if the strike happens, this just gets discarded and I draw 2 cards. So
That's actually one of the few times I've ever heard of an exceed drawing a card on my opponent's turn. That's actually
yep,
very rare. Interesting. And so, what if they do spike me? What if I get stunned? Is that the boost is going to my discard pile? Am I
it
still
is going
drawing
to
the
your
cards?
discard pile.
Okay,
When
I'll
that
take it.
boost is discarded, you draw 2. It says, "Hey, you're going to draw 2. It's going to happen."
Right,
Unless it gets returned to your hand somehow by some insane mean. But
right. Yeah,
otherwise,
it's that one bang boost where he can send something back to your hand or something. Like it's that doesn't happen often.
yeah, it's essentially just like, hey, 3 guard now, 2 cards later. It's
Okay,
very good.
interesting. All right, and I mean the three guard is if you look at like a season 1 through 5, like the defend the boost on spike, that's three guard
Hmm.
and one armor. So this is like a little bit less than you would hope for the money, except that you're getting a
2
draw two
cards for
on top
free.
of it, which is pretty great.
Yes, it
Okay,
is. It's very, very good. Um, and it's a very good part of Merkavas for his game plan too. It's just not that like quadrangle of terror that he wants to set up. This is one of the
right,
in-betweens that are still very good.
right. I feel like okay, so this is what you would use when they're finally manage to corner you. You
Yeah,
fling them back out, but if they've already been flung back out and you don't have these cards, well, this is a pretty good way to get them.
there you go. You have 2 cards on the chamber when you need them.
Right.
And you can even just like, okay, you know what? I'd rather have 2 cards than 3 guard. Let me do one of my strikes that does nothing but waste time when it's safe, and I'm just gonna
Hmm.
draw 2 cards after
Sure.
that.
Yeah. You threaten them with this, and you get your two cards anyway.
There you go. All
Gotcha.
right. So that is I Agitate. And another one here, last special, will be I Drill Through. It is a range 1, power 2, speed 5. Before, spend up to 3 force. For each force you spend, +1 power and close 1.
Okay. This maxes out at like a range 4 5
Speed
power.
5, power 5.
Basically like it's like a faster dive, but way more expensive.
I call it more like an assault, like because it's a close, so you'll
Sure,
never
sure, sure.
switch up the opponent.
You're never going to
Um,
cross up. You're never going to dodge attacks with it, but it can be an above curve range 4 option that hits for 5.
yes,
Okay.
and in the option that you are at range 4, and you're like, I'm gonna drill through, and your opponent played sweep, you have the option select to go, never mind, I don't want to drill through, I'm
Oh,
gonna
right.
stay right here.
Right. Yeah. So just like with every other kind of Rekka effect in Exceed, this is happening after reveal. So you can say, oh, actually, no, that's a little bit too rich for my blood. I'm staying where I am. I've already seen your
Yeah.
card. I'm not going to mess with it.
Once you've decided, like, oh wait, I actually can't break you, and I will trade in a way I don't feel like, I'd rather just waste this card. Let's not
Right.
do that.
Okay.
Um, but it is a very good card. It is another one of Merkava's movement options. This one bringing him back in. He actually has more cards that advance him than retreat him.
Mhm.
Uh, but
Which is probably one of the reasons why I breathe out is so important because he
yes,
doesn't
it's
have a
the
lot of retreat otherwise.
he has this ability, but that's the only strike that will have you retreating.
Right. Right.
Besides your cross normals,
Besides
of
cross,
course.
sure, of course, yeah.
But yes, I drill through strong, above curve, range 4, speed 5, power essentially 5 if you are. You can do it for less. I There will probably be weird situations where you will, but they'll happen as you see them. I can't like prepare you for any.
Sure, sure,
Or
sure. Yeah, and I can see where it wouldn't come up super often because most of the time when you're playing a Rekka, you're like, all right, I'll spend until I break the thing that I'm trying to break. So if I happened to catch out uh, a guardless option that my opponent's doing, I just won't spend it all. But with this,
yeah,
it's like, well, if I don't spend, I'm not even going to hit them because I'm at range 4. So it seems kind of awkward to not spend everything you can on this card.
yeah. Oh, though here's the one scenario: we get a lot of Arakunes in my locals. Arakune can sometimes only hit on odd or even
Oh,
numbers, so
sure,
this lets you
yeah.
dodge.
Lets you make them whiff. Okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah, you get the odd even dodge. Unless he's exceeded, then that goes out the
That
window.
yeah, then you got more problems, and maybe you don't want to be there at all. Um,
Uh,
okay, so that and also, I mean, how is Merkava's economy in general? Like, how often is he going to have 3/4 to spend?
if you've been spending a good amount of times wearing your opponent down with your horrible, horrible mix up, there are times where you're like, okay, I may only have like 4 cards in hand. I can fill up, or you can use some of that gauge that Merkava doesn't use a ton of.
Right.
It's free almost.
That's what it's there
Especially,
for. Okay.
yeah, it's one of those. It's one of the prime ways to use it because you don't ever want to use gauge to move unless you only specifically
You're right.
want to move one.
You want to move it like exactly 2 spaces and no more and no less or something like that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, your gauge is a perfectly fine use for this force expenditure right here.
Okay. That makes sense. And then
And
what about madness?
Madness is a boost with 0 cost that says now strike, and on hit, if you have no cards in hand, +4 power.
Hmm. Okay.
+4
So
power is a lot.
yeah, +4 is a lot of power.
It's
And
very
and
conditional.
and he has a lot of above curve options in his kit, some of which you might know are on top of his deck because you put them there. So I can see some ways to combo those things together to do a a 7 damage I breathe out or something like that. But I still need to have 0 cards in hand to do
Yes,
it.
you
Okay.
will have to at the time of hitting have nothing in your hand. So this card is a lot of Merkava's cards work really well with their own boosts.
Yeah.
I Drill Through is like the one that has probably one of the best interactions between them, where
Right.
I will almost sometimes really have a EX I Drill Through in my hand, like, but can can I make this work? Can I actually play this boost and then threaten my opponent in a way where I'm saying, "Hey, I'm at range 4, you're going to take a boatload of damage. I hope you have something for this."
Right. So you're saying like because Merkava doesn't have any other like outlets for force expenditure in his kit. He doesn't have anything else to spend on. So as a before effect on I drill through, the line of play you're describing is I play Madness, now strike. I strike with the other copy of I drill through from range 4. I then spend up to 3 force until I have 0 cards in my hand, and then I get the +4 power.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, that ends up being above curve 9 damage. I think that's an ultra. That's
It's
ridiculous.
It's so telegraphed. It is
Of
so,
course, yeah.
so telegraphed, which is why you want to use it after you've exhausted a lot of your opponent's options with your range 6 mix-up.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the kill shot when they've run out of crosses and things like that that can actually deal with
Yes.
this setup. Okay,
Once
and it
once
is
you know
pretty
that you're safe,
specific.
it's great.
Okay.
Yes, it definitely is. The more likely scenario that you're going to use this boost in, if you use this boost in, is that you have gotten yourself a good, powerful life lead, and you're like, okay, I have, say, 3 cards in hand. One of them is I capture and devour, and the other is I drill through and I agitate. Why not? You will use I capture and devour, come into range. Here, let me move this. Range 1.
Yep.
Take advantage. This is gone now. You can boost that. Strike with the I agitate. You have no cards in hand, and you just use the other one to get advantage and into their range. Now they're at, you know,
Yeah.
gonna be hit for 9.
Yeah. Now they've got a really scary mix up to deal with right in their face, where it's either this is a mid speed, but it's a pretty safe one. But
I just picked
n-
it because it was like right there.
yeah, no,
Something like
it could be anything. It could be grasp
it,
for 7 or something.
yeah, it could even be a boat. But yeah,
It could
it's
be
the
anything at all.
Grasp is now hitting for 7 power,
Yep.
speed 7. That is like ultra territory for a grasp, and that breaks sweeps.
Oh yeah.
Unless your opponent has a focus, they're like, oh, I'm losing this strike and
Okay.
possibly the game.
Okay. So this actually has quite a few setups. Madness does, but it's not something that you can just jam down and be like, "Well, I hope this works." You're kind of
No,
looking for specific ways to get it.
if you can see the route in your hand where you're like, I can make this work, I can hit them with this card, get into range, play this card to strike, play the last card in my hand, and know that this is going to be a thing, go ahead and do it. It's a
Okay.
great option. It requires hand manipulation, because having 5 cards in your hand, unless you're attacking with that other I drill through, that boost is not going to really do you much.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
So it is, however, Merkava's best way to add damage onto something. Is certainly not something to be, trifled with. Like you said, when he's over here and you're over here, and you have an eye rampage on the top of your deck, you can just boost this and be like, all right, cool. Can you do anything about this, or are you going to get hit for 7?
Right. Okay. No, that all makes sense. And is a I mean, it's rare to see a +4 anything in Exceed. Like +4 power is scary, even if it is
It's
with 0 cards in
insane.
hand.
Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
definitely a finisher card, or an oh no, I need to like really do damage right now for some reason.
Right.
Uh, but it is such a huge boost in power.
Cool. Okay. And so those are the specials then, right?
Yes, the specials have been reviewed so far. Shall we continue to the ultras?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me about
All
these
right.
ones.
I'm going to start with I Resentfully Rage because it's a little simpler. I'll move this out of the way.
Also,
It,
one of the we were talking about Undernight before we got on the call, Mac and I. Man, this is a good animation in Undernight. Like he's so funny looking.
I
His
know,
his weird little tantrum.
because he also does that like crazy scream while he does it
Oh
too.
yeah. Yeah, he's a weirdo. Sorry, continue. We're just
Uh,
gushing about this character's design.
I love my noodly boy.
Yeah, he's such a weirdo. All right, so this is
So
this
I
is
Resentfully Rage.
okay, so this is on curve at 3 for 6.
Yes, it is a 6 power, 5 speed, range 1 to 3 ultra. So a faster mid speed, good range 1 to 3, 3 cost, pretty on the ball. Hit push until the opponent is at range 5.
Okay.
After, you may return this to the top of your deck.
Okay.
So the fact that you hit them at your max range, push them out of it, really makes a lot of moves safe. It again creates more distance. And it just hits for a very solid amount. 6 is nothing to sneeze at. It's very good.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like his kit isn't. I mean, it's not incredibly low power because I persistently cling is in it, but most of his stuff that hits really hard requires some setup. So this is actually like six is actually six on curve at least is a big deal for
Very
him.
good for him. Yes,
Yeah.
it's going to be one that you're going to find yourself using. Not a ton, but there are good scenarios too. I think that this is one of his best moves in general to EX because it hits
Mm.
so many breakpoints. 6 speed, 7 power, range 3.
Yep.
That is winning every strike.
Pretty much.
I would be
Yeah.
shocked at losing something like
Yeah.
that.
Pretty much. Your breaking sweep. Your catching cross. That's everything you want out of an ultra. Um, and we talked about this earlier that he doesn't have a huge amount of need for gauge. And should I be thinking of his ultras as kind of nice to haves rather than like the core part of his game plan? Then
The Resentfully Rage, yes, that is a nice card to have. It is good. It is a solid ultra. I use it plenty of times. But I'm not going to be like, ooh, I can't wait to hit them with the I Resentfully Rage.
right,
It's one that
yeah,
I'm like, okay, this is going to be a good card to play. Now that I'm in that situation, boom.
let's go for it. Right, and
Uh,
so the after effect on it isn't quite like the after effects on these other ones because unless I have 6 gauge, I can't threaten it again. So I'm assuming that if I'm going to be recurring it, it's so that I can use the boost.
Yes, unless you have accumulated a ton of gauge and now you're just like, well, I guess I will just spam I Resentfully Rage and keep my opponent at range 5 for the next 2 strikes while
Right.
doing 12 damage. That can be an option. Like you said, you don't use a ton of gauge with Merkava.
True.
This is going to
Okay.
be one of the times you do. But yes, otherwise, like once you push them to 5, put this on top of your deck, draw a card later. Now you can play this in your uh, let's actually go over the boost real quick. Your
Sure.
normal attacks have +1 minimum, 2 maximum range. And then after, if you did not play a normal attack, sustain this.
Right.
So this card adds a little bit more range to your normals. So all of a sudden, Cross hits at range 3 and 4. Assault hits at range. Oh, sorry, I like coughed a little bit and my throat's all burning. I gotta grab a water.
Oh, good. Take your time. I can't imagine anyone who's coughing in the middle of a broadcast.
Oh boy. Okay. So yes, it adds 1 minimum, 2 maximum range after if you do not play a normal attack, sustain this. So
Right.
now your normals, which are usually a little more restrictive in range, are going to outrange all of your opponent's normals, possibly even some specials. Have you ever been sweeped at range 5? It's
Yeah, it
terrifying.
seems pretty bad, right?
And the fact that you can play this card as a boost at range 4 and go, hey, uh, I strike. What in God's name am I doing?
Right.
Am I assaulting you? Am I
It,
spiking you? Sweeping you?
yeah, or are you doing I
Am I
breathe out
breathing out?
to set your range for the rest of your nonsense? Are you whiffing with I persistently cling? Like you have so many options at that range.
Yes, it's such a good boost to have at this like middling range of 4 to 5.
Right.
It really makes your normals just so much more threatening because a lot of people just can't deal with a spike at this range. They
Right.
they just lose.
Right. And if you and again, by the time this is happening, they might be out of some options that would
Yep.
help deal with it. If they do some of the options that would help deal with it, well, maybe they just open themselves up to I persistently cling later. Like everything that you're doing is kind of choking them out.
Yes, you're
And
gonna.
if you don't play the normal, you just get to keep this boost up.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, eventually there will be a time that comes where your opponent will strike while you have this boost out after you've played, say, I breathe out. Here you go. Oh, okay, I go to range 6, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna strike. Okay, I'll play I breathe out again. And I'll retreat too,
You'll just leave, right?
and I will repeat this, and I will keep this boost. So unless you have something that is winning that strike, you can spam Merkava's technically free options to keep this continuous boost out because
Right.
you're just repeatedly playing specials.
Right. Interesting. All right. Yeah. Again, that seems really annoying. I guess the play then is rush into range one, except well plays into his game plan because now you just spent a lot of resources to do it. I retreat or I run over you or I do whatever with my character ability. I run away again. This boost stays active, so that they've got to like set it up like they need to have some action compression. Then they need to be able to say, all right, I'm moving here and striking on this turn right now
Yes.
to deal with you where you can't really hit me anymore because you've got the minimum range shadow now too.
Yeah, because otherwise, you're just going to beat them out on the movement game. You're
Right,
going to win with your specials. They have to like, hey, you have to hit me with a normal, or I'm just going to stun you this time, and
right,
you're going to lose in general.
right. Interesting. Okay. So I mean it sounds like this is a really strong boost that I should be using a lot. The ultra you called it a nice to have, and if it
Yeah.
didn't have the recursion on it that would let me play both, it sounds like the boost is probably more important.
Yes, the boost is what's going to be filling in like that middling range once you've lost a couple of your specials and you're like not super hot at range, four, and you're like, oh man, I really wish that this assault, could hit at a safer range.
Right.
I've set them up for a good corner play. They're over here, and I don't think they have any fast options. I'm gonna spike them. It's very good to play and threaten. So now your normals are going to hit at the same evil range as your specials.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Cool.
It is one that you have to think about playing, because, like you said, if your opponent runs into range one, um, or say you're here. Here is probably like the worst spot to play it in when your opponent controls the middle space, because if you run to here, yes, this is as far as you're ever going to go. You can
Right.
only now ever be
You
at.
can only make range 4.
Yes.
Right.
So any of your longer range options, because remember, this adds a minimum range as well.
Right.
So if they get into range one in a strike, you miss
Yep.
if you play a normal.
Yep. And if you play a special, okay, so this doesn't hit, that hits, but it's speed 3 and they could play around it. That is speed 1. That doesn't hit. That does hit, I guess. So among the specials, they're trying to hit a speed 5, right?
Yeah,
That's the fastest you're going to be able to go.
because otherwise nothing else will hit, and your eye agitate can be worked around. Um,
Yes.
so that's going to be like a risky maneuver, especially if you only have normals in hand. If
Right.
you only have any normals in hand, I actually don't recommend playing this boost until you get some specials so you can do a little
Like
management as to when you use that normal.
like damage control to make sure that they don't catch you where you just can't punch him back.
Yes.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay.
Yes. Otherwise, very kind of pretty similar to Waldstein's other boost as well, the
Oh, the
destroyers where his
destroyers.
normals
Yeah.
get ranged. I tell you, man, I have a type,
Yeah,
and
you have a specific it's weird monster characters from Undernight that have a ultra range boost. Incredibly specific. All right,
startlingly so.
tell me about I Defile.
All right. I Defile is going to be the ultra that Merkava will be using a little bit more, a little bit fishing for it, perhaps.
Okay.
It's extremely powerful. It requires either a lot of gauge, which generally Merkava isn't going to get, doesn't really care about, or some very good setup.
Okay.
So I Defile has a range of yes. It hits at every single range, no matter where you are, unless somehow you dodge it at X range. But it hits range 1 to 8.
Yep.
It has a power of X. It has a gauge cost of X and a
Okay.
speed of 8. Now, the X in Idefile is a shared value on the card that says X is your range to your opponent. This effect works at all times, even outside a strike.
Okay.
So, at all points, this card has a different cost of gauge and a different power. Every time someone moves, even during a strike, that is going to be changing. Um, the
Right.
way that you make the most value out of this is obviously
If you're
hitting them at max range for max value.
But
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 how
but
much gauge
but
is that?
but then it's an eight. Then it's an 8 gauge ultra for 8.
That sucks. Who wants to
Yeah.
pay 8 gauge? So, the most common way you'll find yourself doing that is being at, say, range 1 to 2. I find 2, to be perfectly fine. And you have a little boost out here called Instant Flight.
Oh, because you're changing it in the middle of the strike.
So the way that it works is when you have this boosted, speed 8 generally gonna beat, grasp. You know what? Let's be baller and go to range 1. And
Sure.
then you play this card. Flip. First thing you do is validate. And I have 1 gauge because I have an eye capture and devour that I hit you with. I pay 1 gauge. And then I go, all right, speed 8. Um oh wait, I have a before ability. Let me flip this card. Oh, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take 7
Take
damage. I
7
spent 1
damage.
gauge on that.
Yeah, I get you. Okay, so because you can change the the range in the middle of the strike, but after the cost has already been paid,
Yep.
you
The
can
the
you can increase the damage on it.
exactly. Now, when I get to range 7 here, technically the cost of my ida file is 7, but I've already
But you
paid for
already
it when I was
paid
at
the
1.
you already paid the one. Okay. I'm I just took my glasses off and I'm just rubbing my face now. That's so dumb. I like that.
It's
So this is a instant flight is a specific threat that is telegraphing this really high damage card then.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
When you play that at range 1, you are essentially telling your opponent, "I have something faster than you, and it's probably going to be I defile."
Right.
As I might have gone through, Merkava has some situations where he is not going to do a mix-up. He is going to be Sagat and present a threat and say, "Beat this or you lose."
Or just
So
take a lot of damage, right?
you want to play a sweep? That's great. Focus. Okay, take 5 damage. I'm now at a preferred range, and you just took a bunch of damage.
Right.
It's a win-win for him.
Right. Okay, yeah, that's terrifying.
Yes. Now this card, that is like the magical Christmas Land Dream scenario. It's like a 2 card combo, so it's very reasonable to make happen.
Okay.
But a lot of times, what else you will do is you will exist in like this range 4 to 5, maybe even 3, and your opponent's like, "Hey, I'm going to, let's say, EX something." They're going to EX, who knows? Possibly die, possibly assault, and you're like, "I can't really afford to lose that right now. I'm a little scared. If I have some gauge stored up, I will use this as like an interrupt, like just like,
Oh,
hey, take 3 damage, don't
It's
hit me.
it's your metered reversal. You're not,
Yes.
you don't have a Shoryuken, you have a really expensive Shoryuken.
And hey, at range 1, it's still
Right.
speed 8 and
Right.
outstuns things.
Right. So if they're, if he's I mean, it beats Metsu Shoryuken at range 1 for 1 damage, but but if you can stun out a Metsu Shoryuken, that's a win.
Yeah, that's you beating an ultra. Your ultra cost 1. I think their
One
ultra cost 3 or 4.
his costs 4 and it's like a win
Oof.
condition all on its own. Okay.
Yes,
So yeah, so that actually is probably worth it as a get off me tool then. But what you're looking for is to do a whole lot of damage with it.
the dream scenario is to do a whole lot of damage, but I will use this card as needed. If I needed to stop a quick strike that I know you're trying to set up, I will, happily. If I can use this to just beam you in the head for 6 or 7 or 8, absolutely. There have been games where, like I said, I built up a bunch of Gava's Merkava and didn't do anything with it. Found myself all the way over here, and I'm like, I'm going to strike, and I have 7 gauge, so
Let's go.
have fun.
Yep. Okay. That all makes sense. And then what about the boost on it? Dark Bite.
So the boost on I Defile is one of his very like specific and niche boosts. It is now strike. Your attack's range includes range 1. What that means is certain cards like Eye Capture and Devour don't actually use this to hit at range 1. That's a meme. God, please no.
Yeah.
Uh,
Take 1 damage.
it's you get so much better use out of doing anything else with it.
Right.
Um, but also it makes your I breathe out hit at range 1, which isn't ideal, but there might be a situation where you need to.
Right.
um, or what you can do is play your I persistently cling,
Yep.
and if you play it face up with this boost out, it calculates from this card. So 1, 0, 1. How do I ping again?
Tab.
Tab. So now you're hitting at
Yeah, tab it. There you
1,
go. There you go.
0, and 1. So
Okay.
you can set this up to where your opponent might not be able to just get out of this range.
Okay. I gotcha. I gotcha. And obviously there's the sort of more range one spike is a thing
Yes,
too, but
that was going to be the next thing I went through. So you can
right.
also use this to threaten a range 1 spike, or not even threaten, just again
Just
present. I'm
smack
hitting you.
somebody with a range one spike, which is a strong ability all on its own. Okay.
Yes.
So it sounds like this is like this is what you use when the wheels have completely come off the Merkava train. You aren't doing your game plan because you're cornered and you don't want to be cornered anymore, but all the stuff that you have to strike with doesn't hit at range one.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll be honest, I don't use this boost a ton. The most that I've used it is to use I persistently cling as like a, hey, you have 7 life left, deal with this or die.
Gotcha.
That's going to be the most plausible scenario. You play this face up and go, here you go, get out of it or lose, which is, very strong in its own. But this Ultra is just very, very, very good, very fast, possibly very cheap for a ton of damage. It's just, I think, is better as
Right.
an ultra, but there will be scenarios where you use the boost.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. All right, so that is the kit then. And I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the normals. You want me to
Yeah.
pull those out real quick?
If you could, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. 1 second. So we got ourselves a grasp. We got ourselves a cross, assault, dive, spike, sweep, focus, and block. Here you go, and then the flip.
Alrighty then.
Sorry for the
Oh, it's
mess.
okay.
Hold on a second. Let me. I can go for it. Oh, I got you.
Move these out of the way.
Get out of here, Ryu. All right. Act 2. So tell me
All
about
right.
so I'm assuming like basically the way that this section tends to work is like unless otherwise noted, you use the normals like normal. Uh,
Normals are good normals for Merkava.
right. But there's going to be some stuff that Merkava does that nobody else does with these normals, or that change the way that these normals work for him, or he gets a certain value out of them. So like how should
Yeah,
I
just a
how should I
couple of.
how should I like reevaluate these normals for him?
All right, so first off, block. Like I said before, that is a 0 power card, and your front side ability only gets better the less are in your deck and the more that are in your hand and your discard.
Right.
One of the beautiful things about Merkava is that if you're at range 7 and you are enacting your game plan, correctly, and you are in a winning state, you're not winning by trading, you're winning because your opponent can't hit you.
Right.
So if your opponent can't hit you, why play block?
Right.
Maybe save it to get rid of something that will be either threatening as a move later on in the game, or to discard, maybe say for another season 6 character, assault. Like, hey, I'll parry assault.
Right.
Got it? Okay,
Right.
now you lost the movement option, or I get to see your hand, see what I'm dealing with, see about your mix-up that, what you can't do against my
Excuse
range
me.
6 mix-up.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
It is one of the few characters from Merkava I think that block has not not more. It's not better as a boost, but he benefits from that boost a lot more than a lot of other characters do.
Okay. Actually,
Oh, fuck! Wait, no. Oh, I'm so sorry. You can beat me out.
no, it's all
Um,
right. No, you can swear
I'm
if you
still
want.
thinking in.
No,
There's no parry.
it's all good. Yeah, so it's the inverse of the Waldstein one. So we got
Oh,
tech hit instead of parry on block.
I asked
Um,
you to not let me say anything stupid this time. Why
don't
can't
worry.
I stop doing it?
Listen, don't worry about it. I feel like at this point it's a solid running joke. Um, so uh, immediate correction, real quick. Parry is not in season 6, and they don't have access to that boost, but they do have tech hit. So I'm assuming then that this would more be used for like diffusing a boost that he can't deal with,
Yeah,
and then
there
just
you go.
just restarting your pressure rather than getting rid of an option. So it's still diffusal. It's just for a boost, not a card.
So if you I would like to use this as, say, if I am at my preferred range and I'm initiating my range 6 mix up, my opponent might play a boost that says like, "Hey, here is, my answer to this. This is extra armor. This is stun immunity. This is I
Attack
can't be moved."
attacks at range 4 plus. Don't hit me or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yep, and now you get to go, "Hey, no," and now also get mixed. Please
Also,
respond.
I'm hitting you right. It's a pressure reset while also getting rid of the option. Um, so it's action compression too, and he does, like you said, he doesn't really have a lot of use for block.
Yes, if you are doing your game plan right and your opponent cannot answer your threats, then block is a little bit lower value. If you feel like your opponent is like, hey, they're very good, they know how to play around me, they're going to be in my face more than I'm comfortable, hold them in your hand for a little bit because Merkava doesn't have a lot of armored options. None actually, unless you boost his not Idril through his eye rampage. And even
Oh,
that is dependent on you still going faster than them.
right.
Otherwise, his armor is limited to block, focus, and the boost on sweep.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So focus over here. I personally still use focus as focus. He does not have a huge suite of defensive options, so using this to keep up card advantage, mitigate damage, and smack him back, beat against the grasp, I think is still just the best thing that Merkava can do. Um, if you have been, again, perfectly enacting your game plan and been torturing your opponent, keeping them at high range, and you are a gauge or two away from hitting them with a range 7 eye defile, I'll bail off. I'll be like, cool, I'll have some gauge, draw. My opponent's very confused for a turn. Then I revert, and I'm like, all right, now a fourth card has entered the range 6 mix up. What do you think it's gonna be?
Right. And now they're terrified.
Yes, so using this as, quick free gauge, also very useful, but you're going to be in melee sometimes, and focus is going to be a good way to
Sure.
keep yourself alive.
Yeah. Focus is a great card, and there's also there's other season 6 characters who are like, no, focus is veil off 100% of the time or 90% of the time. Merkava's not one of those characters.
No, he doesn't use this to specifically only veil off or only focus. It's like a good 75-25 mix for me. I'll
Okay.
use it as an attack most of the time and veil off when needed.
That makes sense. And
Uh,
then sweep and just
Sweep
defense.
So sweep is in my I think the best normal. I love it. It's such a good chunky card. I
Hmm.
talk about breaking the guard 6 break point a lot because it is so important. Sweep
Yep.
is so powerful and so terrifying um, that I don't like to use it for just defense unless I'm certain that I need it to survive that strike. My opponent's been boosting power, and I'm like, okay, I need some kind of defense. Hit him with another focus or an eye agitate with it. Give me some kind of defense for it. Otherwise, it's a
Yeah.
little underpowered.
It's just tough to justify.
Yeah, Wallstein loved it. Merkava not so much.
Okay. That makes sense.
So Spike. I find that the season 6 boost on Spike mix up is very good
Yep.
when you need to again be on your turn and compress your action to move and strike. That one range, especially for someone like Merkava, is the difference between making a clean hit and risking getting counterattacked if he's trying to do part of his mix up, or even like I breathe out.
Sure.
So if your opponent might have like a option that hits at range 3 and you're at range 3, you're like, all right, I really need to get out of here. Boost mix up, retreat 1, hit them with that, retreat another 2, and you have a safe strike.
Right.
I
Now
like to use it for that a lot more than you'd think.
yep, no, that makes sense. And Spike, it sounds like he has options that make Spike totally safe. He's where do we put our this guy?
Oh yeah,
Our
so
our
the I
our
resentfully rage.
our range boost, and I feel like Spike is probably important to represent as a threat, but most of the time you're not really worried about them guarding. You're worried about them being in range of you. And if you're running your
Yeah,
game plan right, you're never going to have to even hit with Spike.
correct.
Okay.
But Spike is still an extremely important threat to retain, so I don't like just boost mix up willy nilly.
Right.
Usually, once I start seeing like some focuses and sweeps and blocks go down, or other armored specials, I'm a little more comfortable using it as a boost, just because it loses value the less armor it has to go through.
Right. That makes sense. Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Dive.
And then dive
So
in reading.
dive and reading. If you happen to know what's in your opponent's hand from any possible reveal or anything like that, it's good if you can make sure that you cleanly win a strike. Or one of my favorite things to do is read across and then put what's the word, an
I'll
eye,
put a persistently cling where
a persistently
they're
cling in the
gonna
corner.
wind up.
Yep, I'm just like, okay, I'll boost this. I want you to attack with cross. Here you go. I want you as far away as possible and take 7 damage.
So yeah, and if you hit with the cross, if you hit on the reading with the cross, even if you don't hit with this somehow, you
You
still got
just
what
get
you
it back.
wanted. You still got what you wanted because they retreated 3 and they really don't want to.
Nope, you just essentially said, "Hey, now you got to either boost an assault or spend 3 force," and you
Right.
got rid of cross. Cross is a
Yeah,
great,
cross is a
a
great
great
normal.
normal.
Yeah, gotcha. And then dive, we talked about it a little bit here and there throughout the thing. It. I mean, it's part of your range 4 and range 3 plays, but where Merkava wants to be, dive is not really a concern. It sounds like.
Yeah, he'll take it when it's convenient. When he's tucked in the corner and you're trying to range 3 spike him or something. A good dive will do absolute wonders for you. But I think that the reading is a little bit better for him, but
Okay,
it's situational. I'd actually call that a pretty strong 50-50. Both are good. It's a good normal and a good boost for him.
sounds good. And then we got assault and air dash.
Yes. So for air dash, if you need to specifically close or retreat 3, and that's it, and you don't want to reveal a card from the top of your deck, or you're at a full hand and
Hmm.
having more cards in your hand, wouldn't benefit you anyway.
Right.
Assault is good, but Merkava can kind of live without it. He's not going to be clamoring for like, oh, this assault will help me, you know, win the game by doing that. It's good, but it's not necessary.
Right. That makes sense. And I mean, he has other ways to close or retreat. So this might just be a card that you could spend as force if you needed to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's an as needed card. Like, do you need it to close too, so you can get into melee and start hitting with some, normals and such? Then go for it. It's probably best used with the boost on I Rampage, because now it turns its biggest weakness that you've
Hmm.
entered your opponent's threat range of 1, and gives you extra damage and 5 armor. So any
Yeah.
clapback is totally
Yeah.
fine.
You're hitting for into your opponent's sweep. You're hitting for 5, and they're hitting you for 1.
And you lose a card, that's easy trade. I'll do that any
Right,
day.
and you gain advantage. That's for what assault quote unquote loses to. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is like, oh, it's like an okay card, and then you boost this, and you're like, oh god, assault's
Yeah,
so good now.
that now it suddenly becomes actually pretty crazy. All right, and then
Alright,
we got cross and
cross.
superior.
Okay, good old fashioned cross. This is your faster, closer range I breathe out that you
Yep.
just can't repeat. It's good, when you don't have your I breathe out, or it's been taken out from your hand because someone from season 3 to 5 parried it, or you got it discarded by sweep. It's just another way for you to retreat very quickly. Uh, I like it as a move for Merkava. His EXs aren't the crazy breaks that maybe Waldstein's was.
Waldstein's
So
right,
his EXs made his attacks horrifying. The EXing for Cross, like I said, it's best for his Ultra I Resentfully Rage here.
right,
It's good on a sweep, so you can beat out other sweeps and spikes and stuff like that.
right,
Even I Agitate is still pretty good. Gives it a little bit more defense, a little more option and speed. Um, but I just think that Cross is going to be a little bit better as your other retreat ability. Because remember, you only have one attack that retreats. That's a special, and this normal's the other way you're going to do it in combat.
right. That makes sense. And I mean, Cross
And
is just good.
Grass,
Cross is just a good card.
yeah, it is just a very good card. It's the I don't want to get hit right now.
Yep.
Very fast. Goodbye.
I don't want to participate in your mix-up.
And now Grasp, Grasp is Grasp. Push or pull 1 or 2, speed 7. Merkava doesn't have a super fast up close option that is reliable. It's gonna beat things that are slower than it. Obviously, is what it's there for.
Yep.
Um, and the boost is like you have other ways of advancing and you have other ways of drawing cards. And in the way that I play Merkava, the game plan that you're going for, generally you don't need more cards like that. You should be in a spot where you can safely prepare, or you can boost your lion weight and get guard out of it too. I
Right.
like using grasp as a move.
Okay. That makes sense. As an attack.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
And also, I Resentfully Rage interacts with all of his normals. So
Yep.
now all of a sudden you can make Grasp hit at range 3 and push him out to range 5.
Yep. Which is exactly where you want him to be.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you can get a couple of these boosts, like one on some of these normals, it takes them from a good option to, oh, hold on a second here.
Yeah.
Maybe I gotta worry a bit more.
And specifically for like the kind of faster half of the normals, it seems like for those ones.
Yes,
Or I mean,
especially the
I
I
mean,
Rampage.
yeah, I was gonna say, Jormungandr seems like it works on almost everything except block.
Yes.
I can't
Yeah,
wait for that range two block though. Oh baby,
they're never gonna expect it.
no, not this time. All right, so that's the kit then. Any like particular tech you want to share? Any info that we haven't covered yet? I got a couple questions, but
No, I think you can go right to your questions, and I
okay.
think if that inspires me, I will certainly say something.
Yeah, perfect. So I would say two questions, and they're both pretty standard for the show. Number one is like we talked a little bit about his economy in terms of you know you don't need that much gauge. You never need to spend for movement for the most part. If I'm like digging through my deck for a specific answer, if I'm like my opponent is finally at the range where they're going to stay and I need to kill them right now, time to start pitching cards away to with the change cards action. Are there any particular sources of force in my deck that I'm more okay with spending? Are there any cards that I
You're
should never spend, stuff like that?
so I would say, your I Resentfully Rage, perfectly fine card to discard as force. Like I said before, it's good. The boost is very good, but if you need, compact force, I'm okay with getting rid of that card.
Okay.
I'm okay with getting rid of even I Drill Throughs. And even like I would get rid of, maybe Dive as Force. Those three cards, I think, are
Yep.
just the least important for your core game plan.
Yeah. All
They
right.
are nice to have, they are good cards, but Merkava can suffer their loss a lot better than, say, getting rid of I Breathe Out or I Persistently Cling, which
Right.
is
Right.
you better really be sure that's not a good card right now
Yeah.
before you get rid of them.
Yeah. Don't try that at home. Okay. And then the other question I had is actually just about counterplay that I like to end the lessons with this that um you just described kind of the Merkava game plan front to back, and my opponent is going to know what the Merkava game plan is and is going to be trying as hard as they can to stop it. Um, what are they going to be doing? And as
So
Merkava, what can I try to do to diffuse some of that counterplay?
So the most important thing is when you are at the range 6 mix-up and Merkava positions for his strike and he places it face down, guessing correctly is going to obviously win you the most. If
Right,
I am playing the I Persistently Cling face down to try and juke you, and you played a dive, you just advance 3 and you're now in, close to melee range. This is scary for Merkava, because even if I rip a 7 and I go all the way here, you're still only 2 spaces away and you're back at range 3.
right,
So controlling this middle space and being able to strike from it mitigates a lot of Merkava's advantage, because
okay,
now he can't exist at range 6. There is no range 6 when you're in the middle, so
right. So
he
so
has to be.
So, I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like you have to be, comfortable not always diving into range 1 and 2, even if that might be your preferred range. You have to kind of work with, all right, I have to call out mix-ups right and either get into here on a counter strike, close the gap here on a counter strike, land some good hits before he can move all the way over here, keep moving as resourceful as you can, and then catch him wrong on the mix up. He uses the fast option and you had sweep, and you guessed right, Merkava loses that hard. He wins by dodging and making you not hit him and being out of your range. But if you guess his mix up right and you punish him for hit, he folds pretty decently. Like his moves have some low damage. He wins a longer game. He's not super aggressive. He's not going to be rushing you down. And if you can really get past that smartly by guessing his mix ups and mitigating his range and mobility advantage, he's going to suffer a lot. His worst matchups are against characters who have a lot of range fours and can just hold out like here and here and here. It's
Right.
such a annoying thing for Merkava to deal with.
Okay. And then at that point, what Merkava's doing to get around that is relying more on his normals and kind of using his mobility to stay in melee range and kind of go for haymakers then.
Yes, you're gonna have to identify like, all right, at range 4, this specific character has like 3 things that just obliterate me and beat 2 out of my 3 mix-ups.
Right.
I need to, keep track of those, play around those, see what their habits are on, when I'm playing my mix-up. When you do the mix-up, you're gonna be doing it over and over again, at least, 2, 3 times in a game usually. That's like the average before the opponent starts panicking, runs in, and make some bad decisions.
Right.
Uh, you can't just keep playing this face down and go, "Ooh, I'm faking you out," because you're not going to punish them for anything. And eventually they're going to get cheeky, die of assault, or move forward other how, and you're like, "Oh no, I'm in
Right.
danger."
Yeah. Now they're going to make you play Exceed, which is Merkava's fate worse than death.
He doesn't want to play Exceed. He wants to play Goodbye. I'm
Yeah.
over here
Yeah.
now.
He wants to play Exceed, but with social distancing enforced.
So if you can get around his range advantage, and if you can guess his mix up correctly and punish him for it, you're gonna do great. Um, and also, if his RNG is bad, he can flip, block twice in a round. I did that last tournament. It felt horrible.
Right.
I was like, I need to get out of this corner. Flip, block. Oh no.
Oh no.
Next turn. I need to get out of this corner. Flip, block. Oh
Oh
my
no.
god.
Right. So he and in those moments the his opponent needs to capitalize on that. Like anytime
Immediately.
they can pin him down, he's not going to be pinned down for long, so take advantage when you can.
Yes, if you can advantage chain Merkava and he doesn't get a good eye agitate to start creating some space, or you break it because you were faster and stronger,
Right.
then you're going to pound him into dust. He is not great on the defensive at range 1. He does not like being bullied into the corner and then not being able to
Not
run
being able
out.
to run away. Okay, that makes sense. And
'Cause-
as Merkava, then what I'm doing is uh, saving some normals so that I can actually fight at this range, and either either getting out of there as soon as I can, or fighting my way out at a disadvantage, and then I'm going to have to make up a life deficit by running my mix up later or something.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the things that I know that as Merkava has punished me a few times because I am still a gut player, which means I'm like, they're not playing a sweep right here. Let me grasp and beat whatever they're trying to do. When you are in the corner here, don't do it. Do not grasp while you are in the corner.
Right.
There is very few things that it's better than,
Yeah.
because at best you outspeed them and you win that trade, and you can advance and hopefully move away from them next turn.
Right.
If you hit them, pushing them out to here,
Oh, it then when you run,
they just have.
they have less room to they have less room they have to make up to chase you down again because you pushed them.
Yep.
That's actually really funny. Um,
So sometimes creating distance isn't worth it if you can't create a ton of it, because it's better and
ah,
more efficient for you to use your ability to
to
move all the way over
run
there.
the whole way rather than be like, here, you're in a second here, you're gonna have to chase me. Let me help you out. Let me give you a
Yep.
head start on chasing me, and then I'll run away. Interesting.
It's not good. It is much better used here, where you can put them into the corner,
And
and
then
now when you flip,
and then dip,
you have
right?
yeah. So
Right,
even
right,
if you
right.
sweep, you're still hitting max range. Even a grasp will put you like here, which is a perfectly fine range, and you have room at your back to move. That is
Right.
also very important.
You can still you can still play I breathe out if they move in a little bit, so you can keep retreating from them.
Yes,
Right.
you like to be in the corner when the opponent is at range like 6 to 8. Once they start hitting here, you're like, maybe the corner
Yeah. Now
isn't where I want to be.
now it's time to go. And if they're holding that set those center three spaces well, you're gonna feel pressured even when you do have a range that you kind of like.
Yeah, that's when you start using moves like dive and I drill through, advance into them,
Right.
which usually catches them pretty off guard. Then you can use a grasp to throw them two over, use your ability to retreat next turn. You've created space again, and you're doing so efficiently. You
Right.
are making space with a purpose. Because if you're just pushing them away in this range, it's not going to do you anything. You're going to be losing that trade if you're going to be trying to move again.
Right.
Um, like with his I resentfully range, it pushes out to 5. So even if like you play a slow at range 1, you're going all the way over here. At range 3, still going out to here. 5 is fine.
Hmm.
Only pushing 2 is not as fine.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you really got to be
You're
careful and
getting
purposeful.
you're getting less value out of your push.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's grasp is very good to use to switch sides so that way you can retreat with your ability or I breathe out.
Right. But pushing your opponent frequently doesn't give you quite as much return on investment as you would think.
No, not unless they're already far away from you. Like range 3, I said you can, boost I resentfully rage and then grasp them out to rage 5.
Right.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah, that feels a lot better than when they're already cornering you and you're trying to throw them into the middle where
Yeah,
where they want to be anyway.
you don't want them in the middle. You want as much range as possible.
Got it. Okay. That
All
makes
right.
sense. Yeah, and any other tidbits you want to share as we wrap up the lesson then? It sounds like I certainly learned a lot about Merkava. I certainly learned a lot about how much I would hate having to deal with him as an opponent.
He is very he's I liken him to Phonon because
Mm.
Phonon's also miserable to play against.
Yeah.
Um but I have a local player they play Phonon as like a main, and the first time I played against them, I was like, "This is absolute bull. Phonon is unfair. This is not fun. I'm having a miserable time." And they were kicking my ass all the time.
Right.
And then, like, the only thing I had to do was like, "Okay, let's stop and see. Think clearly. Do not get tilted. Let him enact his game plan when it's not going to be terrible for you, and just try to maintain your resources, try to mitigate his advantage, save your boosts of whatever set you're in that can advance you quickly and easily. Don't always push him into range 1 until you're ready to commit to maybe advantage chaining him or beating the ever living out of him, because once you give him the chance, he's going to move out ASAP.
Right.
So keep this range until you want to assault, commit, take advantage, and then hit him again.
Right.
That's going to be a lot of your value, keeping him in the corner and just over and over and over again.
Right. For more than just a turn if you can.
Yes,
Right.
characters who can advantage chain like Noel, a little bit of Ryu and Ken, um, it's going to be a major way to get damage because, like I said, his defensive options aren't amazing past his normals and I agitate.
Right.
But the main thing is don't tilt. It's going to be frustrating.
Sure.
They're planning on that. I want you to tilt and be very annoyed, and I want you to say like, "Oh, I have to spend these cards for force right now to get up to you," when in reality those cards would do you so much better held for a better time.
Right. And you actually do have a little bit more time than you think. You don't need to pressure him that hard if it's going to make you play stupid by pressuring him.
Yes, if you were at a point where like have I am so frustrated by the mix-up. I at his range 6, I ran out of things that I can do, and I am not having fun. You might have made a mistake earlier, and that's okay. It is the game. It happens. You learn for next time, and you just don't let Merkava do it again.
Right.
Treat every loss as a learning experience, not an unfun experience.
Right. No, I get you. That makes sense. And for a character like Merkava, that advice might be important. When we go back to our disclaimer at the top of the episode about how you should play Exceed for fun, even against Merkava, play Exceed for fun.
Try your best. Try
Yeah.
your best to have fun against him.
Yeah, because well, you're going to be having plenty of fun as Merkava if you're trying to tilt your opponent. Don't worry too much about that part. But as his opponent, be a little careful. All right. Well, in that case, Mac, once again, thank you so much for your time and your expertise here. I really enjoyed talking to you about it. Um, Learned a ton. Uh, I think I got everything I need. If if you've given me all of your insights.
I think my treasure trove of Merkava knowledge has all been put into this conversation here. If I think of anything further, I'll be sure to let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. All right, and everybody else, thank you all so much for watching. Sorry for making you put up with my hacking and coughing. Hopefully, it was worth it for the information. Go out there, play Merkava, play against Merkava, have some fun. And I will see you all again for the next one. Bye, everybody.
See you later.